Welcome to the North Dakota Center for Persons with Disabilities Collaboration for Change webinar series. We're excited for today's event and hope you enjoy today's content. A little information on NDCPD. NDCPD is a University Center of Excellence on Developmental Disabilities, also known as a UCED, and we're part of a national network of 67 other UCEDs throughout the U.S. We serve the disability community by providing training, technical assistance, service, and information to the disability community. We have approximately 15 to 20 projects at NDCPD that cover a range of topics connected to disabilities: employment, housing, education, and early intervention, to name a few. Check us out at www.ndcpd.org. This Collaboration for Change event is a series of 7 one-hour webinars that NDCPD is hosting as an informational exchange on specific disability topics. Today's event is number 2 of 7. Each event includes a presentation from an expert speaker, along with a short presentation from an NDCPD staff member describing our webinar topic-related expertise and services. With this event, we hope to build a community of individuals and agencies that have a common interest in disabilities. A couple of housekeeping notes. We will be recording today's event, and the recordings can be found on our website, ndcpd.org/2024webinar/. Please use the chat to ask any questions. We do have a short online survey for you to share your comments about today's event. Contact hours are available for both nurses and social workers, and we'll need you to complete that online survey to get those contact hours. The survey link will be provided at the end of today's session, as well as emailed to today's participants. With that, I believe we're ready to get things started. Today's webinar is titled Versatility of Applied Behavioral Analysis, Utilizing Board-Certified Behavior Analyst Services and Consultations to Address Inappropriate Behaviors. And today's presenter is Dr. Shelby Dorsey. And now we will turn the attention over to our guest speaker.
All right. Okay. Now that you can see, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to share about ABA. This is a field that I've been in for many years and something that I'm very passionate about. And so I'm always excited when I get to share that with new people. So let's get acquainted. A little bit about me. I am a board certified behavior analyst, and I'm the director of clinical services at Waypoint Behavioral Health Solutions, and that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I specialize in autism intervention and clinical ABA, but before I did clinical work, I was a teacher in rural Oklahoma, and I've taught general education and special education, all grades, K through 12, and I worked very closely with the school counselor. I thought that I wanted to be in counseling, got a master's degree in counseling, and it just really didn't connect to what my goal was with the students and people that I was working with. So I decided to pursue my PhD in special education at the University of Oklahoma, and that's where I fell in love with ABA and, began to learn all about it. So a little bit more about me is on this page, and this will be shared later, but I don't have to read all of it now. One thing that is important to share is that I am coming to this presentation from the viewpoint of an autistic BCBA with ADHD. So having autism and ADHD does fuel the fire a little bit in my advocacy work, because as some of you may know, ABA is generally thought of as an intervention for autism, but also to be an autistic speaker is something that I'm really proud of. And so, that's just my lens that I'm coming to you with today. My mission is to promote education, empathy, and create a more inclusive society. And I like using the science of ABA to do so. So now that you know a little bit about where I'm coming from, I would love to know where everyone who's joining, where you're coming from. So what age group, what setting, subject, or demographic information that might be relevant. And then alongside with that information, I would love to know if, before logging on today, if you were in the elevator with someone, could you have told them what ABA is? Could you have given a little elevator speech? And in the question box, you can just say, I could have said what ABA was, or I do know a little bit about ABA, or you can just say yes and no, and then add your demographic information. So yes, we have some in the crowd that do know a little bit about ABA, which might be why you decided to come to this talk today. So we have social worker, early intervention, school age, parents, those that work with adults with IDD. Oh, I see a great comment. Somebody knows a little bit about ABA, but it's mostly from autistic adults who felt that it was harmful to them as children. And that's an important note that I think at any interjection, at any intersection of ABA and autism, we do have to accept that we come from a checkered history. And so those of you who might be a little newer to ABA, ABA was used for many years for the treatment of autism. However, it was used in a very aversive way. And so many adults who were served as children using applied behavior analysis as a therapeutic intervention found it to be traumatizing and grew up to need therapy to re-enter the world because their experience with ABA were really horrible. And so that's a bit of our checkered past that we can't cover up, and we don't want to cover up because we don't want to go there again. But it is always interesting and important to hear from those who have been a victim of ABA in the past, and then how we can use compassionate, empathetic, and assent-based ABA moving forward, so that any treatment that we're providing, any interventions that we're providing or services that we're providing are all done so with compassion, and we're doing better. We are not doing worse, for the individual. If you haven't entered your information, please keep entering it in the chat box as we move on to those of you who might be saying like, I know a little, but I couldn't say it in the elevator, I wouldn't. So what is applied behavior analysis? So behavior analysis is rooted in behaviorism, the scientific study of behavior, emphasizing behavior change to improve the human condition. Some of you may also know it by operant conditioning, which is our huge foundation of the science is based in operant conditioning. If you have ever worked with animals, if you have ever been around any kind of performance training, you may have heard operant conditioning used more. I should say, not we, I have taken that out of some of my presentations because it overwhelms people. And I'm not sure why, but if that's a word that you're familiar with, we're talking about the same thing. This approach that we're talking about is known as applied behavior analysis because we are focusing on understanding the laws of behavior and its consequences and applying the principles. Behavior analysts develop effective techniques for analyzing and changing behavior, with positive reinforcement playing a key role. Empirical evidence supports the effectiveness of ABA in various areas, making it a very valuable tool for enhancing lives. So as we move away from harmful ABA, from unsafe ABA, we are using research elements and interventions to improve lives, to make something better than when we got there. As I'm reading, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box too. I'll be monitoring that. And then okay, if that's ABA, then who are the people that do ABA? And this is how our ABA service providers look. So BCBAs are board certified behavior analysts, and those are graduate level practitioners, and they can conduct assessments, they can develop behavior plans, and they can supervise the lower tier analyst. They can also deliver one-on-one services to clients. A BCABA is a board certified assistant behavior analyst, and that's an undergraduate level practitioner. They don't practice independently, but they can still do a majority of what a BCBA can do. They just must be under supervision. And then we have RBTs. So an RBT is a registered behavior technician, and these are entry-level practitioners who deliver services to clients under the direct supervision of a BCABA or a BCBA. So if you are in a location or a setting that wants RBTs, you've heard about them, you want to get them involved, and you want to offer that position, you can't have RBTs without having BCBAs. They're required to go together. They can't practice independently. So did I hear somebody come on? No? Okay. So I get a lot of questions about what does that look like if I'm wanting to hire or consult? Who can I go to? Always go to a BCBA first, because that's the only level of our model that is our independent practitioners. Everyone else relies on that graduate level practitioner to fulfill services. Any questions about the provider levels? Sometimes that's a hot topic, sometimes it's not. So as we expand on the versatility of ABA, understanding that the role of the BCBA is vast and dynamic. A common misconception, which we kind of feed a little bit into with the title of our presentation, is that BCBAs can only work through inappropriate behaviors. So people often think of our services as just decreasing inappropriate behaviors. However, when we actually program and do assessments and develop interventions, we highlight increasing skills and programming replacement behaviors. So the trick of the matter is that when you are consulting with a BCBA, you may be asking them to decrease inappropriate behaviors. And to do that, the BCBA is likely going to go in and highlight what skills need to be mastered before the person, student, client, child can perform the requested or the appropriate behaviors. And we also may need to program some replacement behaviors. So a great example of this is I was called for a consult of a school. A kid was chewing the end of a pencil. If he wasn't chewing the end of the pencil, he would find things on the playground. It was very concerning. The school did an FBA and cited that it was attention maintained. And I asked for an example of all the times the kid had put something in his mouth that was dangerous. And on the list, a couple of times, the child had done it on the playground, hiding behind a bench. So if you know a little bit about ABA, you know that functions are very important to us. And if you're hiding while you do something, it's not for attention. Instead of a giant behavior intervention that required a lot of time and a lot of meetings, I suggested that we provide him with gum. And everyone laughed. Seriously, the principal was like, thanks. I don't know if you got your PhD for that, but we're not, if it was as easy as gum, then obviously we would have done something. We were looking for something a little bit more. And I'm like, I understand. However, can we try it? It's the most inexpensive intervention I have. And that got the attention of the school. Inexpensive, okay, let's try it. We gave the instructions that to the child, you can have gum whenever you ask. Someone will be there with gum under two conditions. One, when you're done with the gum, you always throw it away. You can put it on a piece of paper, but you throw it away. And two is you don't swallow it. However, there was a condition that if you swallow it, you're not in trouble. You get another piece of gum, but it could make your stomach hurt as a little kid, so it can make your tummy hurt. And we would really like to be able to know how many pieces of gum you chew. Okay. Once we gave the child gum, he never again, for the entirety of the school year, put anything inappropriate in his mouth again. And we took data for weeks, and they would call me laughing. This is unbelievable. You've got to be kidding me. You can't tell me that this kid has been doing all this and all we had to offer was gum. But it's so much more than that. It's knowing the replacement behavior for the behavior that the child was engaging in. It's knowing to give instruction, highlight those increasing skills. To where do you put the gum? How do you ask for gum? When can you have it? Things like that. And then believing the child, working with the team, understanding if I swallow it, or if the flavor runs out, I can always ask for more. I don't have to be scared or nervous to ask for more, which, unsurprisingly, sometimes kids don't request what they want from adults because they're unsure of how the adults will respond. So giving those clear instructions and then providing that replacement behavior, we completely reduced his number one inappropriate behavior. And I later learned that his parents he had swallowed a key before. He had chewed on screws and nails that the dentist had to replace some of his teeth, and no one had thought to offer something and teach it as a replacement behavior. So sometimes behavior analysis is a really complex system of understanding the human, understanding why the behavior is, understanding what's maintaining it, and then providing a reinforcer, a replacement behavior, a set of skills, so that we don't have that inappropriate behavior anymore. Not just decreasing it through don't do that anymore, or if you put anything in your mouth, you're going to timeout, or things that in the past people might have associated ABA and decreasing inappropriate behaviors as. Any questions on the BCBA overview? So what I find really awesome about behavior analysis is that we have 13 subspecialties, and even we can go deeper than even these 13, but these are like our official 13 subspecialties. So we have the behavioral treatment of autism and other developmental disabilities. And after reading through many of your introductions, this is likely what's most applicable to you. But we also have organizational behavior management, behavior analysis and brain injury rehabilitation, behavioral gerontology, clinical behavior analysis and education, behavioral sports psychology, prevention and behavioral intervention of child maltreatment, behavioral treatment of substance use disorders, behavior analysis and environmental sustainability, behavior analysis in health and fitness, behavioral analysis in pediatrics, and behavioral analysis in public health. And I just got a very reinforcing comment that we have someone who is a SPED teacher in a high school, and she thanks for sharing the experience with the child who chews. Positive behavior support is ABA. Oh, and okay, so if you will look at the chat, we have Rebecca saying that they currently use positive support to avoid using ABA. And after I read Anne's comment, I see that positive behavior support or positive support in schools is ABA under a different name. It's as if positive support in schools got a different PR person and they separated themselves from behavior analysis because of our checkered past. So many of the education versions of ABA will be named positive behavior support, PBIS, tiered systems, MTSS, if you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that all falls under behavior analysis and education. And we're still using the same principles. They may just be sectioned off differently depending on what your school prefers. So to that person who said, we use this instead of ABA, obviously I don't know exactly what you're using, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but what I often see is instead of using clinical behavior analysis interventions, we at schools prefer to use a education centered approach, which looks more like the multi-tiered systems of support and the PBIS school-wide positive behavior support. And so that would fall under education. Whereas if you're thinking BCBAs working one-on-one and direct with a client, then you might be looking at number 1 or number 5. So again, I'd like to chat on the areas that we looked at, and I can scroll back up. What might be useful in your setting? If you're thinking of age group, setting, subject, or any of that demographic information that you gave me earlier, could ABA be used in your setting? And if it is, if the answer is yes, but it looks more like a public school approach or a school-wide approach, I'd love to know. And if it looks more like, maybe one-on-one services, parent training, one-on-one consult, or even assessment, behavioral assessment. So if you have a tricky case where you have someone that is chewing something and you can't quite figure out the reasons for that, we may offer, I'm going to scroll up so you can see the numbers. What we might offer might fall under, number 1, because the person that we are working with has autism or other developmental disabilities. If they don't have autism and they don't have other developmental disabilities, then it's possible that clinical behavior analysis might be appropriate. If they're in a school setting, then behavior analysis and education might be more appropriate. So if you're looking at this list, if you're reflecting on where you work, what might you need? What subspecialty may be most relevant to you? And I love that some of you already put these in the box because they saw my first prompt. I'm seeing mostly 1, there's a 6 and a 3. So I see a couple of 13s, which is public health. Behavioral pediatrics is also closely tied in intervention to, let's say if we're doing a behavioral treatment and we're primarily working with someone who has autism or other developmental disabilities, and then you say, okay, this works really, really fantastic. I have this child who doesn't have a diagnosis. That's, behavioral pediatrics can really come in there. We also see that in hospital settings, more clinic setting, not ABA clinic, but medical firm clinic where you have a behavior analyst working through a hospital system to provide services. 139. behavioral treatment of substance use disorders. I see several nines. And someone says, I need more ABA services to support the family in their home and communities. That's phenomenal. So if you are one of the people who is thinking like youth age for clients, school staff, parent involvement, a BCBA can do that for you. Just because you don't see it labeled the same way on this list doesn't mean that you don't fit into one of the categories or one of the subspecialties. Okay, I'm gonna just for legal purposes, the information that I'm going to share on some of the particular subspecialties is adapted from the BACB. And the BACB is the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, and they have a web article named Applied Behavior Analysis Subspecialty Areas, and that's where this information came from. So as we're reading through this, the way that ABA is, or what makes ABA so versatile is that the key components that we use, the assessments that we use, the way that we write interventions, the way that we view behaviors lends itself to everyone from, you know, a husband and wife relationship where you're doing clinical behavior therapy and it looks more like talk therapy. So adults with no categorized disability can seek services from a BCBA to help through marital problems or some anxiety. We can do things like that. All the way to my favorite example is I'm in Texas, so the Don't Mess with Texas littering campaign is a phenomenal example of the use of ABA in public or environmental sustainability. So taking elements and the foundational pieces of human behavior, Texas created a campaign, Don't Mess with Texas, to decrease litter. They did several surveys on what the population of Texans who were most likely to litter in the 80s, and they found it to be older men, typically between 40 and 65, that would litter. And so in this campaign, they created a campaign that would attract the people whose behavior they were truly trying to change. Previous campaigns had tried to do like keep Texas beautiful. You see those often, but the demographic was not the demographic that was actually doing the littering. So they created the Don't Mess with Texas and gave some different options, some replacement behaviors for Texans. They also used the information about the population that was, that was targeting and gave a positive reinforcement of don't mess with Texas. Texans love to talk about Texas. And so gaining that information through a series of assessments, they created the most successful social I'm having the word that I'm looking for is escaping me. They created the most successful social program or marketing program. So someone asked in the comment section, what were some of the behavior for littering and how were they utilized? Some were the replacement behaviors. So placing large, and this is, we're so many years removed, so some of the wording that they use is kind of funny to me now, but very manly trash cans. They placed very masculine trash cans in places that saw litter. And they would actually post a sticker that says like, don't mess with Texas. And they would create, like in farmer communities, they would create groups that would discuss litter and how it affects the wildlife and hunting and farming. And then they would have videos like the old TV, if you can remember. I actually, now that I realize I'm talking to a whole room of people not from Texas, you guys didn't see the commercials. But when I was young, the commercials were still on. And in the commercial, it would be like a guy driving in a pickup truck, and he would throw his trash like in his back seat. And then he would put the trash in a trash can instead of driving and throwing it out the window. And so they would encourage people, put your trash in the back of your truck, put it in your back seat, and then move it to a trash can instead of when you're driving down the highway, throwing it out. Another big replacement behavior was with cigarettes. Instead of throwing cigarettes out of the window, they on the commercials, they would utilize that cars used to have the cigarette tray that you could pull out and put your cigarette in. So as part of the campaign, they worked with how can we change the behavior of littering, and how can we put things in place that people already have in their environment. They don't have to buy something fancy. We're not telling them that they have to sort their trash. Instead of throwing your cigarette out the window, put it in your own floorboard and then take it to the trash later. And so they did this through a series of video campaigns. And in ABA, that would be like modeling or prompting. So another question that we have is behavioral modification the same as ABA? Broadly, yes. However, if behavior modification is kind of like gravity, it's there regardless of what you name it. If you drop a brick from the top of a building, it's going to fall. When humans interact with each other, we modify each other's behavior almost without pause. So technically, any behavior modification falls under behavior analysis and what we're talking about, but there might be untrained professionals that use the phrase interchangeably with other things. So I would hate to confirm if the behavior modifications you're talking about are the same as ABA, but on a theoretical level, on a natural science level, yes, it's the same thing. Great questions, by the way. I also, if you're interested in the Don't Mess with Texas campaign, you might Google it and read a little more about it. It's fascinating. And maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just fascinating to me, but it's pretty cool. So as we go forward, we come to the clinical behavior analysis. And clinical behavior analysis is the application of the conceptual and methodological tools of behavior analysis to treat problems that have traditionally been characterized as mental disorders. So clinical behavior analysts work in universities, hospitals, outpatient clinics, as well as primary care and residential settings. So some of your answers to where are you at and who are you servicing, clinical behavior analysis might be the best fit for you because you can target certain behaviors. So common problems addressed through the lens of clinical behavior analysis include depression, anxiety, stress, relationship discord, substance misuse, chronic pain, disruptive behavior, impulsivity, inattention, tic disorders, and sleep disturbance. And that's just a few. The literature really goes very deep, and there are almost endless examples of things that clinical behavior analysis could be used for when working one-on-one with a person or with a family group. In the comment section, we have, if wondering, instead of focusing on bad behavior, we focus more on the behaviors we want to see. Instead of biting someone, bite your toy. 100%, that's a great example of a replacement behavior. If I had a client that kicked, and I said, well, can you just kick the beanbag instead of a person? And they looked at me just as earnest. They were like, yeah, I could. I'm like, okay, well, here it is, kick, go ahead. And then we have, it's not always as easy as that, but sometimes it is. We replace the behaviors, we modify the environment, we teach those skills. hey, if you need to buy it, if you feel, the need to buy it, then this is what you can buy. You can buy food, you can buy this safe toy, you can buy a wash rag. There's even some stuffed animals that are specifically made for people who are seeking that sensory input of biting. And so the way that ABA is used in that, and this is clinical behavior analysis as well, is that we can replace with something that's more appropriate, that doesn't harm the client, and gets them to not harm others within their environment. Yes, absolutely. If you have the opportunity to focus on positive behaviors, you should absolutely do so and think about replacement behaviors that might be applicable to your setting. That would be a great use of ABA. So common forms of clinical behavior analysis include acceptance and commitment therapy, behavioral activation, behavioral parent training, community reinforcement, comprehensive behavioral intervention for tics, contingency management interventions, dialectical behavior therapy, functional analytic psychotherapy, integrative behavioral couples therapy, and stimulus control therapy for insomnia. So if any of the things on this page, if you are struggling with these, your family, child, maybe someone that you work with at school, this is when I would say a consult with a behavior analyst would be a phenomenal use of the resources that are provided by the NDCPD. And Jessie, who is their behavior analyst on staff, she might be able to walk you through how some of these options may benefit you, your child, or your setting. And you can also see that many of the things that were listed earlier of like, how could ABA help you, are addressed in this clinical behavior analysis. So it's really much deeper than just ABA therapy as we think of it. There is a component of behavior analysis that is widely used, especially for the things that many of you replied to it in the chat. And I know we've discussed this a little bit with some examples and tidbits, but behavior analysis in education has been used to improve teaching and increase learning across content areas, grade levels, and student population for over 60 years. It provides a scientific approach to designing, implementing, and evaluating instruction based on analyzing interactions between what the teacher does and the student learning. Behavioral strategies and tactics are used to teach academic, social, vocational, and daily living skills, and to improve entire systems of schooling. So when we're thinking systems of schooling, that's that positive behavior support system, that PBIS, MTSS, which is multiple tiered systems of support. If you are in an environment that have any of those labels, this is what this is talking about. This is the umbrella of which those others are under. Key features include high rates of relevant learner responses with contingent feedback and ongoing instructional decision-making based on direct and frequent measures of student performance. Behavioral instruction design informs curriculum development from basic academics to concept formation and problem solving. If you were looking for, if you're zooming in on a concentration, this would be classroom management, curriculum and instruction, direct instruction, educational technology, evidence-based education, general education, gifted education, mainstream education, special education, instructional design, personalized system of instruction, precision teaching, programmed instruction, school-wide positive behavior support, and systems of schooling with both administration and policy, and teacher education. So based on some of your responses, getting a consult for behavior analysis in education might be what's best suited for you. And you may not have even known that a BCBA could help you in a consult way with some of these things. But it's a great area to get a BCBA to support you in, because I don't think that enough people know what a BCBA can do and the versatility that they can offer, which is obviously why this is the topic that I'm speaking on. But sometimes when you don't know who to call, but you know you have these issues, it can be extremely confusing and frustrating because you're looking for services and you don't know who can help do what. And so as you're reflecting on where you might need support, you can take, notes or screenshot or contact after and get individualized supports to your need. And hopefully it leaves you with a feeling of, okay, maybe behavior analysis can help me. I thought it was only for autism therapy, or I thought it was only this. This can kind of expand your thoughts. And then I think this is the last one that I did a zoom in focus on, is the prevention and behavioral intervention of child maltreatment. So child maltreatment is the commission of acts that are harmful to children, such as neglect, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, and failure to provide the needed health care and safe environment. Each year in the US, approximately 650, you guys can see the number. And this is one of those problems with ADHD and autism, is like my brain will read it, but I just can't say it. So communication issue, but you can see the number. Children are substantiated victims of maltreatment, roughly 80% of whom experience neglect. Behavior analytic interventions to prevent child maltreatment focus on parent-child interactions, home safety, and child health care, as well as conducting planned activity training and promoting the achievement of developmental norms. Additionally, many states and countries have evidence-based home visitation programs that are based in behavior analytic foundations and focus on teaching parents the skills needed to help prevent maltreatment. So it's not always that you're intervening because there's maltreatment, but if you are in a space where you are interacting with a parent, or maybe you are a parent that is parenting a child with high needs, it could be that a BCBA could come in and help you understand how to improve your interactions, work throughout home safety, because a behavior analysis is a trained professional. Some things that a BCBA may come in and see and say, oh, mom, if we just move this to this or do this instead of this, we can make your day a lot easier. We can make feeding easier. We can make food aversion less intense for your family through this kind of training. So one important caveat as you're reading this and kind of absorbing if this is something that maybe you need in your area or you need for yourself, it's not always that the BCBA would come and intervene with child maltreatment. We can also help prevent it. So that's an important thing to remember and possibly utilize a BCBA services for. So we've plugged this before, but did you know that the North Dakota Center for Persons with Disabilities offers ABA services from a BCBA? And that is something that you can contact their offices and get information on. As I was going through the website, the NDCPD website, I was viewing, what are some of the things listed on the website? And many of the topics that I've addressed are either mentioned or alluded to on the website. If you know more about ABA, then when you read it again, you can say like, oh, yeah, that might really help. If you're pretty new to ABA or something in this presentation has sparked like, I didn't know a BCBA could do that. Jessie, she's on the call and she has an introduction coming up. She works for NDCPD and she is a behavior analyst. And here is her page. Oh, thank you, Susie. And Susie put a link in our chat box so that if you want to click on it and go, straight to what their website says, say you're interested, or maybe you need a consult, maybe she can help you somehow. This is Jessie. And Jessie, if you want to do a little introduction and chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Dorsey. I'm Jessie Allery. I have been a BCBA since 2021, and I've spent all of that time working here at NDCPD. I can provide, like Shelby talked about, a variety of behavioral supports. We can do home and school program development. I've gone into a couple of different schools and talked about what are some different options and kind of supported teachers and not only one-on-one programs for students, but also kind of how do we set up the environment for success. We've talked a lot about how do we go from that functional behavior assessment into that behavior intervention plan, and how do we make sure that the students have bought into what we're doing and that teachers buy in, and why are we reinforcing or why are we praising one behavior when students have done something else that we didn't like, and it can get very complicated, and I've just really kind of helped kind of ease that understanding, I think. So like I said, I am a BCBA and I'm a licensed board behavior analyst, just meaning I'm licensed in the state of North Dakota. I also do early intervention for children from ages 0 to 3. Prior to working with early intervention, I was a special education teacher from kids. I had a couple of students that were pre-K, but primarily pre-K to 12. I've spent a bulk of that time in middle school, so students are my jam. I've had a lot of time in elementary. I less time at the high school, but I'm still willing to help work with you if you have high school students, and to go through our programming and kind of see what can I support you with. Shelby, if you want to go to slide 2, please, or the second one.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So again, this is just taken from a brochure that we had created for ABA services a bit ago. What you talked about, it's an evidence-based science used to help understand human behavior and why we do what we do. I will use research-based strategies to support you and to kind of observe the environment and figure out what's going on. And again, really looking at how do we reinforce those appropriate behaviors, or how do we teach those appropriate behaviors? And that if we teach the appropriate skills, it decreases the inappropriate ones that we don't want to occur. And we can work on communication skills. I'm not a speech pathologist by any means. They have a very specific skill set that I do not have, so I don't want to get that confused. But I am able to really help, again, more of that reinforcing. How do we pair and how do we help support gaining some of those language skills and reinforcing using that communication, especially when we're thinking about either devices, gestures. With my early intervention work, I've gotten fairly good at knowing some basic early sign or baby sign. And then a lot of that social communication. How do we request things appropriately? How do we have a back and forth kind of play, that social skills? I've done a lot of work on functional skills such as potty training, hygiene, which is not everyone's favorite topic, but it's an important one. Dressing, eating, again, that could be is the eating a sensory need? Do they not like how some of it tastes? Are they just kind of working on using utensils? What is the thing that we're working on? And again, those social skills, play skills, sharing, which if you have a 3 or 4-year-old, sharing is hard. So you do not feel defeated. It is a hard skill. But then just kind of in general, I've in my classroom time, there was a lot of times where we had kids that were, we worked on how do we lose appropriately, but we had to work on how do we also win appropriately, right? Like we can't shove it in kids' faces. That's not a nice thing either. So I've done a lot of different work in this. So even though as a special education teacher, I wasn't focused on ABA, some of my training was actually ABA skills because it was good teaching. I didn't call it the same things, but I definitely used those strategies. And I think the nice thing about having a BCBA that can go in and support you, especially if your setting is a classroom, is because I'm not going to request something that is out of your range of abilities, right? I know you've got, 8, 10, 20, some other kids, however many in your setting. And so I think we can really work together to come up with what is a reasonable um, activity that you can do that feels manageable, that can also look at that behavior change. But if you are in a different school setting, I can still help you. I just wanted to say that that's kind of the nice thing about having someone who's been in that school setting. I can provide functional behavior assessments that can be school and home. Some of those initial ABA evaluations, again, home or school programming. One-on-one services. So again, that's just kind of really helping to figure out what's going on and to do a lot of, and I want you to think of one-on-one services as more either parent training or staff training if you are a staff member working with individuals, or if you are like an Easter Seals staff or something working with an individual. Um, although I can work one-on-one with that client, our how we bill and all those things it's a little it's that's a whole nother conversation, but I really would like to try to help support the staff and the families specifically that are working with everyone. And then I can provide supervision for RBT students, BCBA students, and BCABA students. Again, just supporting that family training, any type of consultation for schools or job coaches, anything like that, and then staff training is needed. So please contact, you can go down, either myself or Michelle Burney, and it's all on the website under fee for service.
So we do have a question. As I scrolled up this, we have a question. If a family would like BCBA services in the home, are they responsible for the fee for service, or are there other options for payment? And then I see that we have very quick, Christine has given the information.
Paula, that is something that is a kind of another conversation, but we are open to looking at a variety of payment options that you can go through with either myself or Michelle and kind of see what that looks like. But you and I can have a separate conversation since you're down the hall. But thank you so much. Any other questions about either myself or for Dr. Dorsey, for anything at all?
And as you're thinking about your questions, I just have my last slide. So if you would like to stay in touch, my email is listed below, and you can contact me with questions or get information. I do like to share on Instagram with advocacy work, what it's like being an autistic adult with ADHD, and I share about my personal how I use ABA personally, how I just tidbits about my life. And then I also have information on the SD store, which is a store that I have that we promote the dissemination of ABA and through like wearables. So, you know, everybody needs positive reinforcement, things like that. And the funds from the SD store go to sending autistic professionals to conferences. It goes to hiring professionals to work in design. And so thank you, Anne. This is from the SD store. So if you're interested in supporting the SD store, you can find us at www.thesd.store. And then my personal website, my email, and then if you are an Instagram person, there, LinkedIn is my name, and I'm not so good at Facebook, so you can find me there, but there's not a lot going on. And then any other questions that you might have? Is there, I don't know if, I'm gonna stop my share. If there's any other information to share in the chat box, but
I'm sorry, I'm still okay. So if you have any other questions about how you can access ABA services or how that payment goes or anything like that, if you just want to email me, and I will put my email in the chat, and then I can get back to you that way. That way we don't have to worry about taking up other people's time. So if you just want to email me that and your questions, and then we can go from there and either set up a meeting, or I can email you a response, or however that will go. Or if you prefer phone, because sometimes I'm a phone person, I will also put my work phone number in. Whoops, that's half a phone number. Sorry, did not mean to give you half a phone number. There you go.
Well, thanks, Jesse, and thanks again, Dr. Dorsey, for that great presentation. And again, thank you all for attending NDCPD's Collaboration for Change webinar series. We hope you all enjoyed today's content. Join us again for next week's webinar on February 22nd, again at noon Central Standard Time, and hear from Dr. from Roxanne Romanic on becoming familiar with current disability trends. Our NDCPD speaker will be Jolynn Webster, NDCPD's Director of Human Potential. And as Jesse mentioned, if you're interested in partnering with NDCPD to address your training or other service needs, check out our fee-for-service website, ndcpd.org/fee-for-service/ or the information will be in the chat, or you can contact me, Michelle Birdie, at 800-233-1737. And we do have an online survey to get your feedback. The link is in the chat, and we'll also be emailing it to each of you after today's event. To get your contact hours, you must complete this online survey. Thanks again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.